My brother ignored our dying parents for 5 years. Then he showed up demanding half their estate. Colin and I grew up close, but we became completely different people as adults. I stayed in our hometown and worked at a warehouse. Colin moved to Los Angeles to work some cushy job in tech and made it clear he thought he was too good for our small town life. 5 years ago, our mom was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, and our dad had a massive stroke within the same month. They both needed constant care and couldn't live alone anymore. I called Colin immediately and he said, "That sucks. Listen, I'm about to get into a meeting." I said they needed help and he said, "So hire a nurse. I'm busy." I moved into their house to take care of them. I had to quit my job and find part-time work so I could be there. Mom's cancer spread and she needed round-the-clock care. Dad couldn't walk or talk clearly after his stroke. I learned how to change diapers, give medications, cook special meals, help him bathe, everything. I called Colin every week begging him to come visit. He'd say things like, "I don't want to see them like that. I want to remember them how they were." When Mom's condition got worse, I called Colin and said, "Mom's not going to make it much longer. You need to come home." He said, "Come on, man. Don't guilt trip me. You know I can't just drop everything. Besides, she probably won't even remember I'm there." Mom died 3 weeks later and Colin didn't come to the funeral. He said his girlfriend had a birthday trip planned and he couldn't cancel. I saw him post Instagram stories from Cabo that weekend with the caption, "Living my best life." Dad's condition got worse after Mom died. I spent the next 4 years taking care of him alone. I had no social life and no savings. Everything I made went to medical bills. I called Colin and asked if he could help financially. He laughed and said, "Dude, I just dropped 60 grand on a car. I'm not sending money so you can play martyr. You chose this." I said, "I chose to take care of our father." He said, "You chose to waste your life in that dead-end town. Don't make it my problem." When I told him Dad was getting worse, he said, "Honestly, wouldn't it be better if he just went? What kind of life is that?" Dad died last month. I called Colin and told him. He said, "Okay, text me the funeral details." He didn't show up. When I called him after the funeral, he said, "Look, I said goodbye in my own way. Not everyone needs to make a big production out of death." 2 weeks later, Colin showed up at my door wearing a designer suit and sunglasses. He walked in without being invited and said, "All right, let's talk business. When are we listing this place?" I said, "What?" He said, "The house. I already talked to a realtor and she thinks we can get 800,000, maybe more. That's 400 each. I'm thinking we go with a quick sale so I can get my money before the holidays." I said, "Your money?" He laughed and said, "Our money, the estate. Come on, don't be weird about this. They're dead. We sell the house, split everything 50-50, and move on with our lives." I said, "You didn't come to either funeral." He rolled his eyes and said, "Here we go. Yes, I'm a terrible son. You're a saint. Can we skip the guilt trip and talk about the actual money?" I said, "You told me Dad would be better off dead." His face didn't change, and he said, "I said, what kind of life was that? I wasn't wrong. Anyway, I need my half of the estate by January because I'm buying a boat." I pulled out the will and handed it to him. He read it, and his whole face went red. He said, "This says you get everything." I said, "Correct." He threw the papers at me and yelled, "Are you fucking kidding me? You manipulated them. You isolated them and turned them against me so you could steal everything." I said, "I took care of them for 5 years while you posted Instagram stories from vacation." He said, "Because you wanted to. Nobody asked you to do that. You made yourself the martyr and now you think you deserve everything?" I said, "They made that choice, not me." He got in my face and said, "I'm their son. I don't care what that piece of paper says. Half of this is mine and I'm getting a lawyer." I said, "Get 10 lawyers. You'll still lose." He said, "You're a pathetic loser who wasted 5 years of your life and you're still going to end up alone in this shitty house in this shitty town." I opened the door and said, "Get out." He said, "You're going to regret this. I'm going to commit all my time to making your life hell." I said, "You couldn't even get it together to make it to Dad's funeral. I'm not really afraid of your work ethic." Colin tried to contest the will and his lawyer told him he had no case. He sent me a text saying I'd regret this. I replied, "Good luck with that boat," and blocked his number.